ശില്പശാലയിൽ പങ്കെടുക്കുന്നത് മിസ് ഉമാറാണി അമേര, ഇന്റർനാഷണൽ ലേബർ ഓർഗനൈസേഷൻ പ്രതിനിധി. വെൽക്കം മാം.
Thank you very much for inviting me for this discussion, and I'm going to actually not get into some of the issues that my colleagues is both with regards to data as well as with regard to algorithm, and I think I'll labor the point one by one. I think what's missing as of now when you get into a policy discussion is who are the workers who are actually engaged in it. We don't have absolutely any data about who these workers are, even to come up with an estimate as to what is the proportion of workers we are talking about. And also related to that, much more importantly, is the number of hours that these workers work. And depending upon that, it's really helpful for the policymakers to understand, what is the kind of intervention that would be required at various levels, even thinking about social security or social protection for these workers. Are these workers who are completely dependent on the platforms and how many hours of the work they perform? Or are these workers, working on some of these platforms for less hours and then have other jobs on which they are dependent? Some of them might be getting social security through that too. So I think this understanding would only happen if we have proper data across different sectors with regard to this is a violation that exists, and it might be very important for us to see how this can be actually rectified. This kind of field gets quite intensified. Probably we are not talking about the sectors, but globally we do get into those discussions. Is within the freelance segment where workers pay different types of fees to be able to actually access work. And this is probably something that needs to be looked upon. While platforms operate, a platform by per se is not a sector because you have a number of different sectors which are operating, like for example taxi, delivery, beauty, tutoring that have been mentioned. And all of these are part of the existing sectors that are there in the traditional economy. So one way of thinking about remuneration would be to think about what is the existing practice that exists. Like if you take the case of the taxi sector, there is what is called as a minimum fare, which is typically by the municipality or by the state government. So what can one think about actually applying a similar measure within these platforms also? This would then ensure that a worker is getting decent work, and then you can ensure that part of the extended hours can be actually reduced and the worker has also decent working hours. There is one more point that I do want to incorporated into that. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am. Next, we would like to invite Dr. Jaskiran Bedi, Head Public Policy, Zomato Limited, who is in online.
Hi everyone for inviting us to this seminar and consultation. Zomato is 100% aligned with any intent of working towards the welfare of gig workers, and this is substantiated not only by our participation with policymakers on this discourse, but also by our own provisions. While many inputs have been provided thus far in this seminar, yet I'll take this opportunity to present certain facts about gig work on our platform in food ordering and delivery and quick commerce. Number one is flexibility. As much as theoretical experts might state otherwise, the core of gig work in India, especially in the food ordering and delivery and quick commerce domain, is flexibility. There are no unemployment benefits in India. We must recognize that are provided by the governments, and therefore for a lot of people, gig work is actually continued livelihood generation in periods of shocks. Now, one might question that is it truly flexible? Yes, it is. Gig work is undertaken as per the willingness and availability of gig worker. We cannot pressurize anyone to participate on our platform. They utilize this flexibility to supplement their earnings as and when required. On an average, and this is a factual figure that I'm presenting you, gig workers work for less than 12 days per month. at least on the Zomato platform. The NCAR study, Dr. Bhandari is present here, pointed out that 50% of gig workers in their survey respondent group also participated for less than 5 hours a day. So if we're talking about less than 5 hours a day, less than 12 days a month, we cannot secure and say that this is full-time in any way. Our own internal survey showed that 94% of the gig workers that we interviewed, and the responding group was in tens of thousands, stated that they log into Zomato to undertake gig work whenever it is convenient as per their willingness and availability. 94%. Number two, there is high attrition. There is no concept of a gig worker for perpetuity in reality in the food ordering domain in India. The representative NCAR study again found that 40% of the respondents were inactive or had exited at the time of the survey. Of those active, 30% had been associated with food ordering and delivery for less than a year. A large number of gig workers associate with us only for a few days, and many others participate only seasonally to supplement either their income during periods of shock or continued earnings in between bridge periods between jobs. Number three, there is access for everyone. While in traditional employment, access to opportunities is limited by educational or professional backgrounds, gig work has broken these barriers. There is ease of entry owing to no specialized skill requirement, low capital expenditure, and low investments on part of the gig workers in food ordering and delivery as well as quick commerce. Gig work in this domain is a tool for social protection, as I have mentioned previously. Our platforms act as shock observers during periods of unemployment. And again, Dr. Bhandari, your study itself pointed out that 32% of gig workers participating in food delivery were unemployed for 5 months before they chose to opt in for gig work. And this was especially relevant during the period of pandemic and such shock periods. It is a stepping stone for students that has been highlighted previously as well by the speakers. 24% of gig workers in food ordering and delivery chose this field as a first area to step into the world of work. Of this, 88% were students. Since the inception of our food delivery operation, Zomato has provided earning opportunities to 24 lakh persons in India. But at any given time, only 4 lakh are active, highlighting that only 4 lakh, 1/6 are the ones actually participating actively at any given time. This also includes 27,000 plus women, 500 plus specially abled people that we have onboarded on our platform. There are welfare provisions contrary to what has been submitted. I'm of course not talking about at an industry level, I'm talking about Zomato specific here, that it is incorrect to say that no platform provides insurances and social protection. Zomato provides an accident insurance up to a coverage of INR 10 lakhs. Medical insurance, including IPD and OPD. OPD covers include medical expenses for both illnesses and injury for the gig workers and their families. There's loss of pay insurance because one might be willing to participate but unable to owing to chikungunya, typhoid, tuberculosis, meningitis. So we even provide a loss of pay cover to have pioneered gig workers.
Ma'am.
Good afternoon. So much for organizing this consultation. Since the morning, this has been a pretty enriching conversation. We've had experts come in, and I think it is good that we've had some amount of time for platforms. Even though it is 5 minutes, I think the next time we have this, we should let the platforms also speak for about 10 or 15 minutes. So, Uber is a platform that is spread across the globe. We are present in about 70 countries and 10,000 cities. And with this, we also come with a lot of experience about what really works in the platform economy. So principally, right, the platform economy requires some amount of flexibility, and it requires absolute freedom to gig workers who actually participate in this type of work. Now to just, double click into what gig workers on Uber sort of experience, there are no shifts on Uber. A gig worker just does not come onto the platform and is committed to Uber for the next 10 hours or 11 hours or however the time period is. It happens on a trip-on-trip basis. The gig worker is also fully aware of the fare that he will get at the end of the trip. There is absolute clarity on the type of payment that is available, whether it is cash or card. There is clarity on, what is the surge that has been applied, what is the final take home that the driver will actually get from it. Secondly, we also think it is very, very important that when designing social security for gig workers, there is portability. So we know from gig workers who operate on Uber, they also operate on Ola, they also operate on Rapido. For example, the Labour Department in Kerala themselves have an app. They could operate on that as well. So it's very critical that there is portable benefits for gig workers, which means across state lines, across platforms, gig workers will have social security. Now, the other issue is, I don't think we've spent enough time on how the social security architecture for gig workers should be designed. How is it that a gig worker is going to avail accident insurance, health insurance, pension benefits, maternity benefits, creches? How are they actually going to get access to all of these benefits is an important question that we need to sit down and discuss. So far, a lot of these discussions have happened with, like speakers or experts who aren't really involved in how platforms work on a day-to-day basis. So I think it's pertinent that we actually sit across the table and platforms are able to express what exactly happens on the platform. Now, just to give you an example, right, like deactivations, we absolutely understand is a very critical issue for gig workers. Uber in 2022 introduced something called the Deactivations Appeal Center. What this basically meant was that if a driver has been deactivated, and this could be for whatever reason, right? It could be for quality, it could be for a fraud reason, it could be for safety. What the Deactivations Appeal Center provides is the driver an opportunity to appeal this deactivation. And then there is a human element that comes in, right? Like a lot of the speakers spoke about like the lack of algorithmic transparency, or how there isn't really, a human involved, and how a lot of it is automated, like systems which make decisions on gig workers. That's actually not true. If there is in escalation matrices across a lot of our platforms, there is a human element involved. And so there are platforms which have a lot of good practices, and this is not just limited to Uber. There are good practices across a multitude of platforms. And it's important that we have this opportunity. Like, this is definitely the first step in that conversation, but it is important that we have many such avenues where we can lay out the good work that platforms are doing. So I know my time is up, but it would be excellent if we could have more of these conversations, and we are absolutely supportive of any such regulation that comes up. Finally, again, doubling down on what Dr. Bhandari mentioned, there is a lot of nuances which differ from platforms. For example, if you just look at ride sharing, right? Ride sharing has regulations under the motor vehicle aggregator guidelines. Even Kerala has a draft which has been notified. So issues such as fares, benefits, what exactly should be the occupational conditions around which drivers operate are all included in that particular regulation. So it's very important that we also take into account that platforms are not a monolith. There is a lot of activity, there is a lot of dynamism that comes through this, and we should really foster an environment where it could grow. Just to end this, like Uber completed 10 years in India last year, and when we did our internal math around it, we realized that drivers made about 50,000 crores through Uber in the last 10 years, right? That's about $8.5 billion. So through platforms, there is a lot of money that is coming into the hands of the people, and we should ensure that we create an environment where more of this happens and more such platforms actually are willing to do something about our vastly informal economy. So I'll close with that. Thank you so much.
The counterparts from my counterparts from the other companies have repeated. So I'm just going to double tap on it and say that the aspects on flexibility, accidental insurance, etc., are not stuff which companies like us are not looking at. We are definitely doing it, and details of it has been shared with different state governments over different points of time. And there's definitely been a lot of myths around, saying that there's a lot of opaqueness to how these platforms are working, which has definitely not been the case. And I hope that before the bill goes into the assembly, we're able to have discussions where all the stakeholders, and I'm not just talking about the industry, we're able to put forth what we are doing, and our practices are crisp and clear when this bill is introduced in the assembly. My presentation is just going to last for 3 points. One is with respect to the very heterogeneous nature of our industry. While all the previous speakers or research fellows were talking about the fact they're just compartmentalizing the entire industry into one whole, but that's not the fact. Now, if I have to just talk about the transport sector, we are an industry which is already heavily regulated by the state governments. We have an overarching framework under the MORTH guidelines of 2020. And if I have to speak about the Kerala context, in the month of April, to be specific on 8th April 2024, through a Gazette notification, Kerala has notified the state aggregator policy. Now, under this policy, as well as the MORTH guidelines of 2020 of the central government, it clearly states how the fare should be distributed between an aggregator and a driver partner. So there is no level of opaqueness on how much we are taking or they are taking. It's clearly stated, and we are regulated by the provisions of the law. Kerala government is going to be, we are told, going to be implementing the policy in the next couple of months. Also, in this situation, it's very important that we are not working in silos. Well, the motor vehicle department has already come out with certain aspects of social security within their state aggregator policy. And I'm assuming the Department of Labour is also conceptualizing a broad framework. It would be good that there is an interdepartmental convergence at this point, where different departments of the government in the same state are not working separately. This will ensure that aggregators are not really bowed down by the strict regulations, and there is a scope where business can be unaffected. At the same time, the benefits for the workers are not really stranded. Secondly, as I touched briefly in the beginning of my presentation, is the aspect of differential impact. Now, like I mentioned, unlike the food delivery ecosystem or the e-commerce ecosystem, we are an industry which is already regulated, unlike the other players. So there is definitely a case of differentiated impact there. So we will have to bring into picture while we are going into further discussions. As the Honorable Minister had pointed out that on July 29th, a technical committee has been formed. It's my humble request that in this technical committee, there is a fair representation of stakeholders from different walks, so that it's not restricted, and a lot of problems which the rules which had in the other states are kind of rectified in the Kerala aspect, so that, because like I mentioned, we are a regulated industry, we shouldn't be facing the bite of it with different states coming with their own recommendation. And that's about it. And I hope that, like my counterpart has already mentioned.
Good afternoon to everyone. I'll take first a quick 1 minute to talk about what Porter does, because it's fairly new and not many of you would have heard about what our company does. Porter is an on-demand logistics transportation company. We transfer goods across various category of vehicles, be it a bike where we transport goods weighing between 2 kg to 25 kg, to 7 feet trucks to 14 feet trucks. We are looking to launch in Trivandrum very soon, most probably next week. So you all will be familiar about the app very soon. I think most of my peers across all companies have already discussed about the challenges with the existing framework with which the gig worker laws are being looked at. So I don't want to again repeat it. What I want to focus on is to ensure that there are sectoral nuances brought in while framing the law. By sectoral nuance, what I mean is that you already have a code on social security by the Ministry of Labour and Employment that talks about a turnover contribution to the social security fund. Now, when you are in goods transport business, a large goods transport business, the way we look at turnover is very different from the way the other large aggregators look at turnover. And what happens in effect if we go by the code on social security is Porter, which is comparatively a much more smaller company, ends up contributing 5 times more than the other large aggregators. So we request the government to ensure that while you are framing the law for gig workers, please ensure that there is sectoral nuance brought into the thought process. I would like to thank everyone for this opportunity. I think it is amazing that before sharing the draft, there was this consultation happening, so that there is much more thought and our inputs are considered while framing the draft in itself. But I also feel that it is important that there are more focused roundtable discussions on these various clauses that you would be planning to come up with, because this requires more than a 5-minute conversation. There are a lot of inputs, there are a lot of insights.
ഇത്തരമൊരു ഡിസ്കഷൻ ട്രൈപാർട്ടി ഡിസ്കഷൻ വളരെ അഭിമാനകരമായിട്ടുള്ള കാര്യമാണ്. മാത്രമല്ല, മിനിസ്റ്റർ ഉദ്ഘാടനത്തിൽ പറഞ്ഞ ഈ റെസ്റ്റിംഗ് പ്ലേസ് എന്നുള്ളത് ഏറ്റവും പ്രധാനപ്പെട്ടതാണ്. നമ്മൾ എംപ്ലോയർ മാത്രമാണ് ഇൻവിസിബിൾ ആയിട്ടുള്ളത്, എംപ്ലോയി വർക്കർ വിസിബിൾ ആണ്. ഏത് തെരുവിൽ പോയാലും ഇന്ന് ഈ വലിയ കമ്പനികളുടെ ടാഗും ധരിച്ചുകൊണ്ട് ടീഷർട്ടും ധരിച്ചുകൊണ്ട് നിൽക്കുന്ന ചെറുപ്പക്കാരായിട്ടുള്ള അഭ്യസ്തവിദ്യരായിട്ടുള്ള ചെറുപ്പക്കാരെ ഇന്ത്യയുടെ ഏത് തെരുവിലും കാണാമെന്നുള്ളതാണ്. അപ്പോൾ ജോലി ചെയ്യുന്നവർ വളരെ വിസിബിൾ ആണ്, ജോലി ചെയ്യിക്കുന്നവർ മാത്രമാണ് ഇൻവിസിബിൾ. അപ്പോൾ ഇത് ഏറ്റവും വലിയ സന്തോഷം. നമ്മൾ ഫ്ലിപ്കാർട്ടിനെയും സൊമാറ്റോയും സ്വിഗ്ഗിയും നേരിൽ കണ്ടു എന്നുള്ളതാണ്, അവരുടെ പ്രതിനിധികളെ കണ്ടു എന്നുള്ളത്. കാരണം നമ്മളുടെയൊക്കെ വീട്ടിൽ നമ്മുടെ കുട്ടികൾ ഉപയോഗിച്ചിട്ട് നമുക്ക് ഓരോന്ന് വാങ്ങിത്തരുമ്പോൾ നമ്മൾ ഉപയോഗിക്കുന്നു, പക്ഷെ നമ്മൾക്കറിയില്ല ഇത് എവിടെ നിന്നാണ് വരുന്നത്. അപ്പോൾ അവരെ കണ്ടത് വളരെ സന്തോഷം. ഞാനൊരു ഐ എം നോട്ട് making a satire, but it's a reality. So ഈ ട്രൈപാർട്ടി ഡിസ്കഷൻ വളരെ പ്രധാനപ്പെട്ട ഒരു കാര്യമാണ്. ILOയുടെ പ്രതിനിധികൾ ഇവിടെ ഉള്ളത് കൊണ്ട് I would like to remind the ILO persons that in India the situation is very, very serious. For the last many years, after 2015, there is no ILC in India. So the basic question, we are in every practice, international practice, it is very important that the tripartite system should be maintained. That's a very important question. So the ILO people must intervene in this issue, and ILC from the very beginning, from the very British era itself, ILC was a statutory thing that took place in India. But after this government, this central government, from 2015, there is no ILC. So tripartite, we have to focus on that. That's my request for the ILC. So with regarding this, AITC കാര്യത്തിൽ വളരെ സീരിയസ് ആയിട്ടാണ് ഈ ഗിഗ് വർക്കേഴ്സിന്റെ പ്രശ്നം ഏറ്റെടുക്കുന്നത്. ഞങ്ങളുടെ ജനറൽ സെക്രട്ടറിയും റവന്യൂ മന്ത്രി KP രാജേന്ദ്രൻ സഖാവ് ഉണ്ടായിരുന്നു, മറ്റ് പരിപാടികൾ കൊണ്ടുപോയി. ഞങ്ങളുടെ ഈ രംഗത്ത് തന്നെ വർക്ക് ചെയ്യുന്ന യൂണിയന്റെ പ്രസിഡന്റ് ശ്രീ KG ശിവാനന്ദനും അതുപോലെ തന്നെ GC സഞ്ജിത്തും അവർ ഈ പറയുന്ന രംഗത്ത് ഗിഗ് വർക്കേഴ്സിന്റെ സ്റ്റേറ്റ് ലെവൽ യൂണിയന്റെ ലീഡേഴ്സ് ഇവിടെയുണ്ട്. സമയക്കുറവുള്ളത് കൊണ്ടാണ്, അല്ലെങ്കിൽ അവർക്കും കൂടി അവരുടെ എക്സ്പീരിയൻസ് ഷെയർ ചെയ്യാൻ അവസരം കൊടുക്കണമെന്ന് റിക്വസ്റ്റ് ഉണ്ട്. കാരണം അഡ്വക്കേറ്റ് സജിലാലും ഇവിടെ എത്തിയിരുന്നു. കാരണം ഞങ്ങൾ ഇത് വളരെ സീരിയസ് ആയി ഉയർത്തുന്നതിന്റെ കാര്യം, ഇവിടെ പ്രശ്നം ഒരു എംപ്ലോയി റിലേഷൻഷിപ്പ് ഇല്ല എന്നുള്ളതാണ്. ഇപ്പോ ഊബറുമായി ബന്ധപ്പെട്ട ലണ്ടനിൽ അല്ലെങ്കിൽ ഇംഗ്ലണ്ട് സുപ്രീം കോടതിയുടെ വിധിയിൽ തന്നെ അവിടെ കൃത്യമായി എംപ്ലോയി റിലേഷൻഷിപ്പ് ഉണ്ട് എന്ന് കൃത്യമായി പറഞ്ഞു കഴിഞ്ഞു. നമ്മൾ പലപ്പോഴും ബ്രിട്ടീഷ് നിയമങ്ങളാണ് പിന്തുടരുന്നത് നിയമത്തിൽ. അങ്ങനെയാണെങ്കിൽ ഇന്ത്യയും അത് നമ്മൾ പിന്തുടരും. ഇപ്പൊ സുപ്രീം കോടതിയുടെ മുന്നിൽ ഇത് പെൻഡിംഗ് ആണ്, നോട്ടീസ് അയച്ചിരിക്കുകയാണ്. കൃത്യമായും ഇക്കാര്യത്തിൽ ഒരു ക്ലാരിറ്റി വരണം. ആ ക്ലാരിറ്റി വരുമ്പോഴേ നമുക്ക് കാര്യങ്ങൾ മുന്നോട്ട് പോകാൻ കഴിയുള്ളൂ. നമുക്കിതിലൊരു സെൻട്രൽ ലെജിസ്ലേഷൻ വേണം. നമ്മളുടെ മുന്നിൽ ഇപ്പോൾ സോഷ്യൽ സെക്യൂരിറ്റി മാത്രമാണ്, കോഡ് ഓൺ സോഷ്യൽ സെക്യൂരിറ്റി. that we are not ready to accept the code on social security. പ്രസിഡന്റിന്റെ അസന്റ് ഒക്കെ കിട്ടിയെങ്കിലും ട്രേഡ് യൂണിയൻസ്, ഇന്ത്യയിലെ സെൻട്രൽ ട്രേഡ് യൂണിയൻസ് ഒന്നും അത് അംഗീകരിക്കുന്നില്ല. ഈ വിഷയം ഇപ്പോൾ നമ്മൾ ഉണ്ടാക്കുന്ന വെൽഫെയർ ഫണ്ട് അടക്കമുള്ളത് ഈ സോഷ്യൽ സെക്യൂരിറ്റി കോഡിൽ മാത്രം പറയുന്നതാണ്, വേറെ ഒരു നിയമത്തിൽ നമുക്ക് കാണാൻ കഴിയില്ല. പക്ഷെ ഈ കാര്യത്തിൽ ഒരു സെൻട്രൽ ലെജിസ്ലേഷൻ ആവശ്യമാണ്. അത് വളരെ ഇമ്പോർട്ടന്റ് ആയിട്ടുള്ള കാര്യമാണ്. മറ്റൊരു കാര്യം, കേരളം നമ്മൾ തൊഴിലാളി രംഗത്ത് എല്ലാ കാര്യത്തിലും മുൻപന്തിയിലാണ്. പക്ഷെ ഇക്കാര്യത്തിൽ നമ്മൾ അല്പം ഡിലേ വന്നു. കാരണം രാജസ്ഥാന്റെയും കർണാടകയും ബില്ല് എന്റെ കയ്യിലുണ്ട്, രാജസ്ഥാന്റെ ആക്ടും കർണാടകയുടെ ബില്ലും എന്റെ കയ്യിലുണ്ട്. ഇപ്പൊ ജസ്റ്റ് ഞാനിപ്പോ ഇവിടുത്തെ ബില്ല് കണ്ടു, ഡ്രാഫ്റ്റ് നേരത്തെ കിട്ടേണ്ടതായിരുന്നു, പരിശോധിക്കാനും പഠിക്കാനും. പക്ഷെ ഒരു കാര്യമുണ്ട്, ആ ഡ്രാഫ്റ്റിനേക്കാൾ അവരുടെ ബില്ലിനേക്കാൾ വളരെ മെച്ചപ്പെട്ട ഒരു ബില്ലാണ് നമ്മളുടെ മുന്നിലുള്ളത്. അതിൽ ലീവ് വിത്ത് വേജസും ഗ്രാറ്റുവിറ്റിയും ബോണസും ഒക്കെ മെൻഷൻ ചെയ്യുന്നുണ്ട് എന്നുള്ളതുകൊണ്ടാണ്. പക്ഷെ അതിൽ പറയുന്ന വർക്കിംഗ് അവേഴ്സിനെ സംബന്ധിച്ച് നമുക്ക് കൃത്യമായ ഡിസ്പ്യൂട്ട് ഉണ്ട്. കാരണം 8 hours എന്നുള്ളത് വി ഹാവ് ടു സ്റ്റിക്ക് ഓൺ ദാറ്റ്. ഇറ്റ്സ് an international practice that 8 hours job. But all of this are overtime. Others spread over 60 hours is not accepted to us. All the trade unions are sorry. അതുകൊണ്ട് വർക്കിംഗ് അവേഴ്സിന്റെ കാര്യത്തിൽ ആ ഡ്രാഫ്റ്റിൽ തന്നെ തിരുത്ത് വരുത്തേണ്ടതുണ്ട്. മറ്റു കാര്യങ്ങളൊക്കെ ഞങ്ങളുടെ അഭിപ്രായം ഈ ബില്ല് വിശദമായി പരിശോധിച്ച ശേഷം ഞങ്ങളുടെ അഭിപ്രായം കൃത്യമായി എഴുതി അറിയിക്കുന്നതാണ്. മറ്റ് പങ്കെടുത്തവർ കൂടി ഒരു ജസ്റ്റ് ചോദ്യം ചോദിക്കാനെങ്കിലും അവസരം ഉണ്ടാക്കണം. ഒരു ഓട്ടപ്രദക്ഷിണം അപ്പോൾ ആയിപ്പോയി എന്നുള്ളൊരു പരിമിതി ഒഴിച്ചാൽ again I thank all of you. Thank you.
ചെറിയ കൺഫ്യൂഷൻ ഉണ്ട്. മലയാളത്തിൽ സംസാരിക്കുന്നു, മറ്റേതിൽ സംസാരിക്കാൻ. I have my colleagues from the industry, so I would like them to understand. ആദ്യമായിട്ട് CII ഇവിടെ ക്ഷണിച്ചതിനും ആൻഡ് CII എന്നെ ഇവിടെ അയച്ചതിന് നന്ദിയുണ്ട്. Few points I would like to finish it before the bell goes. So from a CII perspective, let's be very clear, we are all for any legislation or any measure, policy intervention which would ensure decent work for the now millions of gig workers who are engaged in the industry in various sectors are ensured. So we are all for it. But having said that, let's be very careful about what we do and how we do it. And do we first of all have all the data and experience for us to come up with a very definitive policy intervention, and that might, if we do something wrong, that might lead to impact of a growing sector which has the capability to provide millions of jobs in future, work, let's not even call it work for future, and let's not do something that will interfere with that, is one plea that we have from CII perspective. And also with the experience of the labor laws, we also desire that whatever we do, let's do this applicable for the country as such. Let's not keep doing this for Kerala, for Karnataka, for Rajasthan and all of that, and each one has how much ever we see that sometimes it is just some of the provisions are copied from one to the other. It is not uniform across this thing. And CII representing the employers, we have gone through that situation of a company having presence in multiple states has to follow multiple different legal requirements, which is not welcome at all. It eventually impacts not the employers, in the case of labor laws, with the workers actually. And let's not get into something like that and come up with this thing. So our plea will be, there is a code on social security, which I think for the first time some of the ILO representatives will also recognize here. First time across the globe trying to come up with a definition which is very simple, at the same time covers all the gig workers, what is platform, etc. And we have already seen in the 3 or 4 states which have initiated that definition is going through changes. How will we do this? How will we implement such provision across the country if the basic definition of a gig worker itself is different? So our plea is, let's wait for code on social security to be implemented. There, as one of my colleague from the company said, I am also part of this discussion. Very serious discussions are happening about being implemented. We know that covers only social security aspect of it. There are other issues like the fairness of contract, etc., which should be addressed, and probably states can take lead in that. But let's not hurry with something which at the end of the day will lead to some kind of a double taxation system and it will eventually not impact the platforms, it will eventually impact the gig workers who are involved in it. So our request will be, let's do something that is beneficial for everybody, particularly for the gig workers, and if that has to be beneficial for gig worker, it has to be something that's national that is easily understandable and implementable by platforms across various sectors. Another important aspect, sorry, the bell rang, with this point I will finish. Another important aspect is, as employers, we already see the labor department, labor enforcement authorities already overwork. The number of, I'm sure ma'am will agree with me, from the force that she has to enforce labor laws, with the kind of growth that we have seen in the economy, number of companies, number of employees, I don't think that's adequate. And it is reflected in, because most of the conferences like this, when I go and attend, people say, this guy doesn't pay minimum wages, that employer. These are all issues of enforcement. And that is not being done. And please, let's not burden the same organization, same enforcement machinery with additional task of implementing something with regard to gig workers. Either we create capability, as one of my colleagues, both from both sides have talked about, within the labor department or outside of it, but let's not strain the existing labor enforcement machinery, and which will eventually mean loss of focus on their actual work with regards to enforcement of labor laws. With this, I stop. Thank you very much.
തന്നിട്ടുള്ള എല്ലാ ഡെലിഗേറ്റ്സും സ്പീക്കർ അവരുടെ അഭിപ്രായങ്ങളും സജഷൻസും പരമാവധി നമ്മൾ തന്നിട്ടുള്ള ടൈം ലിമിറ്റിൽ അവർ നമ്മൾ കൺവേ ചെയ്യാൻ ശ്രമിച്ചിട്ടുണ്ട്. കാണിക്കുന്നില്ല ബിക്കോസ് ഇറ്റ്സ് ഓൾറെഡി എ കൺസൾട്ടേറ്റീവ് പ്രോസസ്. So I'll switch to English and Malayalam, please bear with me. First of all, I would like to thank the representatives from ILO who have actually talked about from their perspective, from ILO's perspective with regard to decent work and the rest of the agenda. 4 members from the ILO have already spoken on that. Thank you so much for your inputs, and we'll also share the email ID so that further any kind of suggestions and feedbacks, and we also will circulate PPT so that you can have much more understanding of what exactly it would be. Since the bill is in a draft, it's a very rough draft of kind of a state. It's a skeletal framework. So we'll actually send in the PPT to every one who have actually attended the workshop today. So that you can actually send your feedback and suggestions. And our speakers who actually joined us online, they spoke about both from the welfare aspects and also from the algorithm and how that should be more transparent, and many suggestions were put forward by our speakers like Kanita Gurumurthy, Dr. Danya, and even Ms. Uma from ILO. So they were also mentioning on the various aspects, and everything has been noted down. Whatever you have said has been noted down, and we'll look into it. And many of the aggregators who have been here, they have also mentioned about, since the concept note, it was said as food delivery. Our chairperson from Kile was saying, adoru example aayittu parnane ullu. It's not solely based on food delivery platform. It's like platform across ella tarathilulla sectors. So all the nuanced sectors which our aggregators have also said that transport in the and food delivery on the, even other kind of local logistics in the new app is going to come. So there are different sectors, and that nuanced kind of sectoral differences can also be accommodated, and we have to look into that. So the aggregators, whatever they have put forward, we also will take into consideration. And also our trade union representatives, നമ്മുടെ ട്രേഡ് യൂണിയൻ റെപ്രസെൻറ്റേറ്റീവ്സ് അവരുടെ പ്രശ്നങ്ങളും അതുപോലെ സജഷൻസും അവർ മുന്നോട്ട് വെച്ചിട്ടുണ്ട്. താങ്കൾ പറഞ്ഞ എല്ലാം തന്നെ നമ്മൾ നോട്ട് ചെയ്തിട്ടുണ്ട്. കുറച്ച് പേര് പരാതിയും മറ്റു കാര്യങ്ങളായിട്ട് അവരുടെ കൺസേൺ അവർ റിട്ടേൺ ആയിട്ടും തന്നിട്ടുണ്ട്. ഇപ്പോൾ ഈ വേദിയിൽ വെച്ച് തന്നെ കുറച്ച് പേര് റിട്ടേൺ ആയിട്ടും തന്നിട്ടുണ്ട്. അത് നമ്മൾ ഈ ബില്ലിൻ്റെ മറ്റുള്ള നടപടിയിലോട്ട് പോകുമ്പോഴേക്കും അത് നമ്മൾ കൃത്യമായിട്ട് അത് നോക്കുന്നതായിരിക്കും. അതുപോലെ തന്നെ CII, the representative from CII was also here, and he also mentioned about all the acts combined together. It should not actually affect both our employers and employees. So we also would love, as state of Kerala, we also want to combine both, and it should not be a problematic issue for the employers or the employees. So we'll have much more consultations, and we would request, and we would be more than happy to get more feedback and suggestions from our esteemed delegates and speakers. So I feel that even though it was very short, it's very interesting and enriching for a person like me. So understanding what exactly the aggregators and people who are working on the ground level, and our employees who are, again, I cannot say that employees are gig workers. So how they are what their opinion about or their suggestions regarding welfare measures, whether it's been implemented or not. So everything will be looked into. So whatever suggestions we have given today and later on in the week, it will be definitely taken into consideration. So thank you so much, and there are many other representatives here. So I really thank you for a valuable time, and please do give in your suggestions. Thank you so much for attending this workshop. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am.
പ്രതികരിച്ചുള്ള ഒരു ചെറിയൊരു കമ്മ്യൂണിറ്റിയുടെ അംഗമാണ് ഞാൻ. ഒരു 17,000 പേര് വരും മൊത്തത്തിൽ. 2016 മുതൽ ഞങ്ങൾ നിരന്തരമായി ഞങ്ങളുടെ വിഷയങ്ങൾ ബഹുമാനപ്പെട്ട അധികാരികളുടെ മുമ്പിൽ ഉന്നയിച്ചിട്ടുണ്ട്. ഇപ്പോഴും നിലവിലാണ്. ആദ്യമായിട്ട് എനിക്ക് പറയാനുള്ളത്, ഈ അടുത്തൊരു ബില്ല് വന്നു, വളരെ സന്തോഷം. ഈ പ്ലാറ്റ്ഫോം വർക്കേഴ്സിൽ ഒരു ബില്ല് എടുക്കാനുള്ള ഇനിഷ്യേറ്റീവിനെ ഞാൻ അംഗീകരിക്കുന്നു. 20 അംഗ ഒരു സമിതി രൂപീകരിച്ചു. പക്ഷെ ഏറ്റവും നിർഭാഗ്യം എന്ന് പറഞ്ഞാൽ അതിൽ ഏറ്റവും കൂടുതൽ പ്രശ്നങ്ങൾ അനുഭവിക്കുന്ന ഞങ്ങൾ ഡ്രൈവേഴ്സിന്റെ ഒരു ഭാഗം അതിൽ പരാമർശിച്ചായിട്ട് കണ്ടിട്ടില്ല. അതുകൊണ്ട് അതിന്റെ ബന്ധപ്പെട്ടവരുടെ ദയവായി എന്ന് പറയുന്നു, ഞങ്ങളെയും കൂടി ആ ബില്ലിന്റെ പരിധിയിൽ ഉൾപ്പെടുത്തണം. അതിനു വേണ്ടിയുള്ള കാര്യങ്ങൾ ചെയ്യണമെന്ന് വിനീതമായിട്ട് അഭ്യർത്ഥിക്കുകയാണ്. കാരണം 7,000 പേരുടെ ലൈഫിന്റെ പ്രശ്നമാണ്. രണ്ടാമത്, ഇവിടെ ഓൺലൈൻ ടാക്സിയുടെ പ്രതിനിധികൾ വന്ന് സംസാരിച്ചു. അപ്പൊ അതിലൊരു ചെറിയൊരു കാര്യം പറയാനുള്ളത്, ऊबर का जो रेफरेंस भी उधर बताया था, हम आज में जी रहे, कल का नहीं है, परसों का नहीं है. जो कल एक बंदे ने जो 18 घंटा ऑनलाइन होकर उसको जो एर्निंग्स मिला है 1100 रुपया, उसके लिए उसने 113 किलोमीटर रन करना पड़ा. उसी 1100 में से 49 रुपीज आप लोगों को प्लेटफॉर्म ही काटता है. उसके बाद जो 30% कमीशन गवर्नमेंट को, जो बाकी जो टैक्स, एर्नाकुलम में एक बंदे को डेली रहने के लिए कितना पैसे चाहिए ना. इसलिए जो बातें बोलना आसान है, लेकिन वो प्रैक्टिकली करो. मैं खुद गाड़ी चलाने वाला बंदा हूं, इसी वजह से मुझे ब्लॉक करना मेरे कोई परवाह नहीं है. डेमोक्रेसी जो है ना, जो तलवार होता है, उसी किताब के नहीं, एक वर्क एटमॉस्फेयर क्रिएट करो प्लीज, रिक्वेस्ट है. मेरा जितने जो भाषण में आपको समझ गया होगा, ഇവിടെ ആകപ്പാടെ എല്ലാത്തിലും വന്നിരിക്കുന്ന സ്വിഗ്ഗി സൊമാറ്റോയുടെ കാര്യങ്ങളെയാണ് പറഞ്ഞത്. വളരെ നല്ലതാണ്. പക്ഷെ അതിനിടയ്ക്കെങ്കിലും ഒരു 49 രൂപയുടെ ഒരു കാര്യം ഉന്നയിച്ച ബഹുമാനപ്പെട്ട ഏത് ട്രേഡ് യൂണിയനാണ്, അവർക്ക് അതിന്റെ കൂപ്പുകയും വേറെ ഒന്നും പറയാനില്ല. ഇന്നലെ ജീവിക്കുക. ഞങ്ങൾക്ക് വളരെ മോശമായ അവസ്ഥയാണ്. 10-12 ലക്ഷം രൂപ എടുത്തത് എറണാകുളത്ത് വന്നെ കാണിച്ചു തരാം, വണ്ടി കിടന്നുള്ളവർ. അപ്പൊ ഇത് വാക്ക് ഇവിടെ അവതരിപ്പിക്കാനായിട്ട് ഒരു അവസരം തന്ന എല്ലാവർക്കും നന്ദി. നല്ല അവസരം.
നന്ദി സർ. സാറിന്റെ ഈ വിലയേറിയ നിർദ്ദേശത്തിന് സർക്കാർ നടപ്പിലാക്കുന്ന കർമ്മ പരിപാടി കേരള ഗിഗ് വർക്കേഴ്സ് ബില്ലിന്റെ ഭാഗമായി ഇവിടെ സംഘടിപ്പിച്ച ശില്പശാല സമാപിച്ചതായ ഏവരെയും അറിയിക്കുന്നു. എല്ലാവർക്കും നന്ദി. ഭക്ഷണം ക്രമീകരിച്ചിട്ടുണ്ട്.